So many ask me to do something that I'm very involved with and excited about these days. And one of the things that I'm doing is, and have been doing for some time, is writing a book about the noble gases, out of which we've proved 6 out of 7, myself and my colleague Sylvie. And it took me about 10 years to finish helium, which is now just about ready, and I've been working and finishing neon, so I thought I'd talk to you about that today. Actually, neon is the first remedy of the noble gases that I proved in 1993 when I started this journey, a long, long journey of the noble gases. And the reason that I went for the noble gases is that it's my belief that if we understand all the noble gases, then we can use that as a key for understanding the whole of the periodic table. Because each noble gas is a total fulfillment and completion of the period preceding it and an opening to the period after it, so that being a fulfillment of the wishes of all the elements beforehand, if we can understand where that element is, we can understand where all the elements preceding it are, where they're going to. Which is why it's been taking me such a long time to write, because really it's, I have to look at the whole periodic table and not only the noble gases. But let me start with a brief case. This is an acute case that my wife Camilla took, a lady age 43, and what you'll see marked here in blue is actually symptoms of neon. So it's a case of a bad flu. I feel terrible, bad flu, sinuses, tired, irritable, had these symptoms for 2 weeks, they're not improving. She's tried various remedies with no help. She has a bright yellow mucus glowing. It reminds me of the fluorescent yellow marker pen. And just to tell you that that was a symptom I had in the proving. I woke up one night and I had all this mucus streaming out of my nose, and I looked at it and it was glowing. And I was totally shocked, and I actually woke up my wife. Maybe that's the reason that was my ex-wife now. And I said, look at this amazing mucus. She wasn't impressed. But it remained with me, and the funny thing is that my supervisor didn't believe me, so he wrote down delusions he has fluorescent glowing mucus. But anyway, that was a symptom: headache, right temple, right forehead, very tired and weak, blowing the nose all day, sinuses, head full of catarrh, large quantity with painful sinuses. I felt I could blow and blow, but not unblock my nose. She's irritable, she's feeling people are putting upon me. My family was over at Christmas. It's as if I have a mark over my forehead. Like saying, people, please come and walk over me. I feel used and abused, and I'm a fool to let people do that. All the time I just wanted to tell people the truth, because it was Christmas. I had to talk plainly with people. I'm always letting things go, but it's better to be straight, especially with family members. That's one of the things you'll see with neon, but with all the noble gases have that to a degree in different ways, is the need to tell the truth. We gave her neon 200, a single dose. Immediately after the remedy, she said she was very thirsty and need to pass stool. By the evening I could feel and think better, could get out of bed, could go to work next day. The headache is gone. She retook the dose the next afternoon, felt much better, was good in a meeting. Irritability and feeling of being used and abused gone. I feel good, much improved, and all troubles gone. So that's a brief acute, but it gives you a couple of elements of neon, which is element number 10. As you can see, it's got 10 electrons arranged in a beautiful symmetry, being a noble gas, and 10 protons, of course. So it's element 10, it's, the weight is just about 20 molecular weight. You'll see it on the periodic table. Here it is at the end of the second row, and These are the noble gases that we proved, helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, radon. Of course, the last one, element 118, is not actually being discovered or manufactured in the world, even though people keep thinking that it has been, it hasn't. So we'll have to wait for that. I've called it Luciferium. Let's see if they take that on. We'll start with just some physical affinities. You see that it's quite spread over as many remedies, and it takes time with the remedy clinically to find out which are the most prominent physicals. But there's affinity to eyes, irises, abdomen, rectum, head, ears, nose, sinuses, face, mouth, throat, female, breast, especially ovary, respiration, skin, and nerves. So, let's look at some of the generalities, and here I have just pulled out a few of them. Obviously, there are a lot more. There's a great sensation of strength and agility, the ability to walk very fast for a long time, very effortlessly. And that's interesting because it reminds us a bit of the neighboring remedy, fluoric acid, which also has a great capacity for exercise, continuous and prominent exercise. So the easy, effortless walking, long distance, but on the other hand, a spaced out, drug feeling, lack of energy, lethargy, the opposite state. Neon, the word neon means new, and it does relate to birth and to the newborn, pregnancy, end stages of pregnancy, and there has been clinically also found to be a causation of exposure to neon lights in the treatment of babies for jaundice, for instance, but also I've seen it in people who kind of walked into the mall and too many neon lights and they felt totally whacked and out of it afterwards. So we'll go to the mind. And the first theme is a theme of division. Felt I could divide images of a split down the middle, left and right, or of being a feeling of being half and needing a partner. The split can be both ways. It can be a vertical split and it can be a horizontal split. On the other hand, there's a great feeling of unification. So again, two opposite themes, with a sense of absolute oneness, as if there's no difference between the observer and the observed. I saw 2 points of lights merging together, becoming one. And again, this theme of the ovary or ovum feeling like an unfertilized ovum, as if complete and unfertilized, as if one. Another theme that goes together with this is the theme of numbers. And the interesting thing about the numbers over here is that it's all about even numbers. 2, 4, 8, 10, 20. So there are a few things to do with the number 20, which of course is interesting. The molecular weight of 20, 20 protons, 20 electrons. I dreamt of a round construction with 20 spokes. I thought that's good. That's 2 times 10. Dreams somebody in room number 20. Just to make clear over here, because of the lack of time, I'm only showing you very short examples of each of the proving symptoms, but each of these themes are backed up by many, many symptoms. So I'm not just choosing them from 1 or 2 symptoms alone. So this numbers thing sounds like this. I've always really liked odd numbers. Now I suddenly found even numbers were much more attractive. I felt like I'd never known even numbers, and now I did. Half was missing before. Now I can move smoothly between number 1 and number 3. And you see that makes sense in terms of the placing in the periodic table, where we between period number 1 and period number 3, and neon is like the bridge between the two of them that joins both together, and it gives that evenness and all the implications. For instance, one of them being the division into 2. Okay. Yeah, it's a sensation of being between 2 different experiences. So really, we have to investigate what is the experience of the first period, what is the experience of the third period, and how neon bridges between the two with all the ramifications of that. But the remedy itself is very much a point of a bridge, a transition between two things, an opening. And I'll tell you in that context just a little experience that I had during my proving of neon. I kept having a feeling that I'm standing before a big transition in my life, a big opening, that something needs to open up. And the way I described it, the way I felt it, was as if I'm trapped in an egg, a cosmic egg. And that egg has to break open. And when it breaks open, I'm going to find out something about the world and the universe and myself. And I was anticipating and waiting and looking forward to that and thinking, how can I make that egg break really and come out into a wider totality of experience. And actually eventually it did to a degree, because some shaman guy during the proving came and knocked me on the head and all kinds of things opened up. So there's that transition and waiting and opening up. And you see this in the whole theme of things being new in neon, as if there's a new order in space, images of newborn babies, dreams of babies and umbilical cords, of pregnancy and labor, of giving birth. So the whole thing, not the whole thing, but a big part of neon is that point of just about to come into the world. Actually, that point of transition in labor between, you know, a fulfillment of pregnancy and the breaking of the waters and the baby coming out and into the new, wider, bigger experience of the world around us. Which is in a way the kind of feeling I had, this something has to break, something has to open up. So we can equate the months of pregnancy here to the different elements. If we start with helium, I'm not starting with hydrogen, because hydrogen is a pre-incarnation stage, which is actually still the stage of a collective soul. And the collective soul, meaning the united field of all souls being separated from God. It's not actually talking about the individual, but about the collective soul separating from God, whereas helium is the formation of the first individual soul. Its process of incarnation, which is very precisely described in helium. And in neon, at the end of the process, we see the just about ready to be born and the new birth, so that we can equate metaphorically the different elements, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and fluoride, to the 9 months of pregnancy. But you see that the vision that we saw in helium and newness go together, because without the vision there cannot be anything new. Newness depends on the vision, otherwise we will just have cloning. Replicate, 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 rather than the shuffling that comes out of the vision. In effect, it's a difference between mitosis and meiosis. Mitosis being a cloning, and meiosis being the vision, a shuffling, and a making something new out of it. And interesting thing that came along, a theme, was thoughts about the second day of creation in the Bible. Many thoughts about the second day of creation. I've always felt comfortable with the division between dark and light. That is the first day of creation in the Bible, this light and dark separation. What I now need is a division of heavens and ocean. Thoughts of my love for the ocean. Before I did the proving of the noble gases, I was theoretically equating them with many of the ramifications of the number 7. One of them is the 7 days of creation. And I'm amazed constantly to find how closely that tied in with the provings, as you see over here. Of course, this is a double-blind proving, and yet the images come through. We see very strongly helium related to the first day, neon to the second, argon to the third, the creation of trees and earth and separation of earth and water, krypton to the stars and the moon and the sun, xenon and radon to the 6th day. It's quite amazing how well the whole thing matches together. So in neon we see this relationship to the second day of creation. And what is the second day of creation? In a way it's the most difficult of all to understand. It's short, but let's see. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. So something here about division which we've already seen, and something about the division of waters, the top and bottom waters, whatever that means, and a layer between the two, heaven or sky. We can depict it like this, okay? Separation of waters above and waters below. Of course, that has many ramifications if you look at it a bit more closely. For instance, what are the waters above in the human body? We can say that the above waters are cerebrospinal fluid, are the tears, etc., are the water in the lung, whereas the waters below are the kidney, bladder, urination, etc. So that's just one example of higher waters and lower waters, but there are others. If we come to this water theme, we see that it's very interesting that H2O, the H2O water molecule, has 10 protons and 10 electrons in it. Oxygen has, how many? 8. And hydrogen 1, right? Yet neon also holds 10 protons and 10 electrons. So there's an equivalent between them, the waters above and the waters below, with the same number of atoms of electrons and protons in the molecule. From the proving, I have superbly fluid and graceful motions, as if I was moving in water. Delusions that I could walk on water, thoughts and dreams of rivers and oceans. And this whole theme of water was very, very prominent. So here's a short case. Waterworks. She's a very childish woman. Again, I'm marked in blue what relates to the remedy. She says repeatedly, it's about my waterworks. It's all about my waterworks, meaning urinary system. She has had these problems for many years. Allopathy has not helped. She has edema, watery swelling in her whole body, legs, arms, fingers, and ankles. Scanty urination. She's like a little girl in her marriage. She speaks about her husband and her marriage in a childish way, very naive. She's antisocial and not interested in company. That's one of the features that most of the noble gases share, which of course makes sense because noble gases don't interact with any other chemicals. They called in earth chemicals. She has no contact with the husband. She felt separate in the relationship. It is difficult to get much information out of her. She keeps repeating in a childish voice, it's just my waterworks, you know. But she has a strange feeling that she's dissolving with all this water thing. And that's also a symptom of neon. We gave her neon 200. 2 months later, all swelling and urinary problems much better. The marriage is much better. The connection with husband has improved. She's much more social, appears more grown up. Gave her nothing, and the improvement continued for over a year just on this one dose. Another theme is a theme which we could call Starry, Starry Night. And in Starry, Starry Night, there's a great longing in neon to reconnect with the stars. I call it E.T. Go Home. With a thrill of excitement, I watched all the stars in the sky above, and I just knew that the noise I heard was the stars trying to communicate with me. I felt wonderful. Looking out of the window at the night sky, it suddenly cracked open. I felt as if I was seeing the stars from the other side. I just long for some clear night so I can see my stars. If I could reconnect, everything would be all right. So a strange thing which takes us back to that day number 2 of creation, the second day, which is about this firmament, somehow a firmament of stars, and the ability to see beyond those stars, for the cosmic egg to crack, to go to that world which lies prior to that, in a way back to the first period, to the period of helium, to the period of hydrogen, to the period of outer space, both on a cosmic universal level and on our own personal level, with all the meanings that go with that. Another theme, you'll see, I'll tie all these themes together later, but we're just looking at the separate ones first, is knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. And this was a strange thing about people during the proving, hearing somebody knock on the door, going to open the door, and nobody's there. It was an interesting thing as regarding to the way we look at provings, because, you know, with the first person who said that, we totally dismissed it and took it out of the proving. And we said that's just anecdotal, people knocking on the door, no one there. But then another one came, and another one came, and another one came, and suddenly we saw, yes, it's something. And it's just one of those lessons that don't be too much in a hurry to discard symptoms out of proving, because you never know how that will fit into the totality. Somebody else had dreams of knocking on many different doors, and nobody opened them. And again, in a similar way, windows, with dreams of windows, wanting to watch the world through my windows, dreams of us looking out of windows, of derelict windows, of opaque windows, many different themes of that. And the strange symptom of a desire to spy through the keyhole. Of one particular prover who never had anything like that before, but she just had the urge throughout the proving to spy on her partner through the keyhole. Not necessarily in a sexual connotation or anything. Even when he was working in the office, she'd be looking through the keyhole to see what he's doing. So you see this firmament, windows, knocking on doors, spying through the keyhole, is all a kind of theme of coming together of a kind of barrier which we need to penetrate. And again, with the iris, as if the iris is a barrier or firmament to the world which we need, which is standing between us and reality. Image of being inside my iris looking through. I felt the eye was seeing light through the iris of an eye in front of me. So this firmament, which is so, you know, in the second day of creation, it's so difficult to understand what it is other than that layer of sky that somehow separates water above and water below. But we see that it has a relationship to doors, windows, spying, iris, the sky, time itself, which is an important theme in the proving, meaning time coming in and time not being there. The whole concept of what time is, and this cosmic egg that I mentioned. And I could sum it up in another way, is an intellectual layer of logical rules which organizes the world but obscures the true spiritual truth. I showed you that the relationship between neon and between numbers, and between even numbers and division, and all that goes together with the game of logic, dividing, separating, understanding, mathematics, numbers, time, that whole concept comes in after we depart from the spiritual hydrogen and helium and we are ready to be born into the world. In comes a layer of understanding of logic that obscures something about what lays behind. And we have to penetrate that in order to reach the real light of hydrogen, helium, and the sun. To depict that firmament here between the first and the second period, one example I gave out of all the different elements is the ozone layer, being a layer that is like a firmament of sky that separates the sun and its ultraviolet light and the world within the atmosphere that we live in. And the whole of ozone is a description of this, one of these manifestations of the layer in many different ways, like as if in a glass dome, as if a cotton wool layer covered everything, etc. So here's a depiction of this firmament, which separates us from the heavens, from the world above. But yet that in neon we see that we have both sides, that firmament obscuring us from the first period and its truth, and the ability to penetrate through and shatter the cosmic egg. And where does it happen? It happens up here at the top of the vertex. I felt a wide opening from the top of my head outwards. I feel invincible when upright, as if kissed by heaven. And this upright is a very important part to understand. It's a recurring theme. Now I feel upright in space. Before I was at a tilt, both physically and morally. The whole proving can be described as rectification, a spiritual and physical rectification of standing up straight. And when we stand up straight, we are connected through what I call the window in the sky to the energy of heaven. The bowed feeling has been replaced by uprightness. So if we usually are in a bowed situation in our existence in the world, and Neon is full of this in terms of rushing forward into time, dwelling on the past, thinking of the future, of leaning forward both morally, spiritually, and physically, forward and backwards, if we rectify ourselves and align, then we can connect through that window of the sky to the energy of heaven. An alignment like that is a theme that runs through all the noble gases. The power to align them all together in a perfect line that runs from mid-heaven vertex down our spine, through our perineum and into mid-earth, which gives us supreme power and understanding and all the other qualities that are held within. Here's an example of that window of the sky. I just long for some clear night so I can see my stars. If I could reconnect, everything would be all right. If I am upright, I can do the impossible. May the force be with you, as they say, but you have to be upright for the force to be with you. Then you get your neon saber. And what happens then is really it becomes effortless energy. I was cruising along in the energy which was not of my own muscular power. It was coming from somewhere else, effortless, superbly fluid and graceful motions. Walking uphill, I felt every stride was covering great distances. I felt I was doing the usual 20-minute walk in seconds. I felt like a titan in 7-league boots. So we get this amazing connection, both physically and spiritually, and the ability to do the impossible, and the force is with us, only because we are aligned to universal force and not using our own force, which happens when we are bowed forward or tilted. And then with that comes a spiritual bliss, peaceful, absence of urge to do something, calm, peaceful, no desire to busy myself, not pulled this way or that, not wanting anything, unneedy, totally desireless, paradise, absolute oneness, effortless, blissful, a harmony between heaven and earth. Beautiful. And with that, dreams of being a successful spiritual teacher, of being in a crowd with a spiritual teacher. I now feel forgiven for the ultimate sin. I feel unbounded love for myself. I'm totally in the moment, here and now. Desire to tell the truth. Beautiful. And Neon is full of that stuff, which in a way is difficult clinically because that's not the stuff you see from your patients usually. They don't come to you saying, I feel blissfully in the moment. But we'll see. This is like being given more than you ever wanted, like wanting the sun and being given the universe, penetrating that layer beyond the sun. So you'll see there's some relationship to Jesus here, in many symptoms, others too, walking on water, being in the moment, love, the whole watery Pisces second period. And unbounded love and blissfulness and healing and spiritual teacher and all that kind of stuff. There's also a strong relationship to the matrix, which we will see as we go along. Now, what I want to show you, which we haven't seen yet, is a different side of Neon, which doesn't come through so readily in the proving because it's very attractive to look at the whole blissful and permanent and connection of heaven and being here now and all that side of things. But it's important to clinically to be aware of what is on the opposite side. And to do that, I'll just show you how the opposites work here. So you'll see that each of the positive theme has its negative side as well. The opposite, the bliss, is a feeling of wretchedness, The no original sin has a feeling of continuous guilt and sin. This is something people don't realize about neon, how negative it can be. Materialistic. The spiritual becomes materialistic. This is all when we bowed over into the physical world. Freedom from identity and the past enslaved my identity and history. Letting go becomes holding on. Dissolving of boundaries becomes bound and imprisoned. Elated becomes drugs. Water becomes earth. Stars become earth. Even becomes odd, also in terms of being a stranger and the odd one out. And paradise becomes hell. These are the two opposite states of neon. And to give you an example of how that looks, what I've taken is I've collected symptoms of the proving of many provers into as if one person, just to give you an idea of the negative state, because that is what you're going to see in the daily reality of clinic much more than the kind of blissful state. Wound up, confused, out of my center, indifference, left the dishes and dirty hair in the bath, can't be bothered, withdrawn, grouchy, wanted to be alone, stayed in bed a lot, detached. I am there for everyone, no one is ever there for me. I felt alone, as if everyone perceived me as odd. I felt strange, like an outsider, subdued, depressed, like a void, no joy, great sadness and hopelessness. I cried and cried, weeping on waking. Desperate, I want to cry all the time. I'm in the valley of discontent, sad, depressed, listless, low energy. I would just like to go to sleep or read under the covers. I cried over my unfortunate life, disgusted with myself, violent, malicious. God, I feel so wretched, out of control, as if time is moving relentlessly and remorselessly forward, and I'm stuck behind. Panic, guilt, constant anxiety that I won't get it all done. Anxious about everything, depressed about the anxiety, everything feels wrong. Stress, great irritability from noise and being spoken to, typical of the nobles. Had an explosion for not being the perfect person, typical of the nobles. Irritable, argumentative, sharp, aggressive, blew a fuse at one of our visitors. I reproached my partner. Cursing, swearing, irritable in the afternoon, smoldering away like an explosion. Horrible mood, reproach my partner again. I hurt him, but I don't care. Indifferent, malicious, vindictive, full of hate. I want to reproach people. I've been in a rotten mood all day, dwelling on past offensive. I just can't let go, it's making me angry. I'll kill you, I'll slit your throat. Violent, irritable, aggressive. I was really pissed off. You get the idea. Interesting the amount of time the word explosive is mentioned, and I don't know if it relates, but neon, the gas originates from the explosions of superstars. So to sum up in a way, we are attracted by the neon lights of the city, which promise the sun in the dark of night, but deliver a superficial, empty experience, the valley of discontent. And the ultimate of that is drugs, and drug states and everything related to drugs. The theme about drugs comes out in the proving, even in the kind of blissed out states. Many times you mentioned a drugged feeling, a spaced out feeling, not here, feel as if I'm on a flashback, feel as if on drugs, that kind of thing. Quite typical of a gases, but very strong and prominent, so that it sounds like somebody inside a drug state. However, what I did is I later conducted another mini proving, and this is what came out of that. Itchy and restless. The itching is changing place. It's a psoric remedy, as you would expect from a remedy in the second or third period. Everything feels on the surface, irritated with the itch. This is not really real. It's very much on the surface. It feels skin deep, on the skin only. I'm out of it, lightheaded, drugged. I feel like an irritable, high-rev drug addict, a junkie, a skinny, restless junkie, itching, who needs a fix. My existence is reduced to the moment of getting the fix, the drugs. Nothing else matters, skin deep. I want to just go into oblivion, a death wish, not to be. Like an adolescent boy, a drug addict, itch and scratch and fix, brainless, just a desire that has to be fulfilled. That's all there is to it. drugs or theft, the addict, young and dumb, you try drugs and it takes over, you lose your dreams, goals and desires. Who you are is lost. All you have left is an itch to be scratched. You cannot avoid the scratch. You are reduced to itch and scratches. So we see that on one hand, when neon is connected and upright and facing the window in the sky and connected to universal force, everything is possible. There's no desire. There's no neediness. There's no rushing forward. There's no time. There's just the here and now. And there's incredible spiritual and physical energy. But the moment we bow downwards and tilt ourselves forward, backwards, to the side, in time and in space, we divide ourselves into the world of desires. And the ultimate of the world of desires is this situation where it's just itch and scratch. Desire and gratify, desire and gratify. And the ultimate of that is the state of a junkie whose every moment is just the idea of, I have a desire and I've got to fix it now, and doesn't matter what happens, and a total loss of a self of who we are and everything that we can be in this world. We could say that this is like giving more than you ever wanted, like wanting the sun and being given the universe on one hand. And on the other hand, this is like getting nothing of what you ever wanted, like being promised the sun and being given a plastic yellow ball. These are the two extremes. And that's what neon, in the middle of the night in the city promises us. It promises everything, but as you know, it doesn't deliver much of that. Here's a summary of some of the themes of neon that we've mentioned. I hope that's given you a taste of the remedy and what it's about. Thank you very much.